Oh, we're glad you could join us today for our Shepherd's Bookshelf. We got a big book to look at today. Before I look at the book, I want to mention something that all of us in Christian leadership have recognized for quite some time, and that is that there has been a big change in Christian circles in the last couple of decades or so. People just aren't going to church as much as they used to. A lot of churches are closing down. Um, a lot of people seem to have no interest in Christianity. There's a rising trend of those called the nuns who have no interest in spiritual things at all, it doesn't seem. There is a lack of people going to Bible colleges and seminaries. Mission organizations are hurting for missionaries. Pastors are needed. That it used to be there was plenty of guys who wanted to be in the ministry, not so much anymore. Just a lot of things that we recognize today as a real problem. Uh, and how do we understand this? And so I've come to a book that is very helpful in us trying to understand what is going on in Christianity and in religion in general right now. The name of the book is Why Religion Went Obsolete. The subtitle is The Demise of Traditional Faith in America by Christian Smith. Now, many of you recognize that Christian Smith is one of the best known of the sociologists, Christian sociologists in the world today. He's been writing and researching for a long time. He's a professor at Notre Dame. I'm not altogether sure of all of his affiliations as far as Christianity is concerned, but does claim to be a Christian, has Christian leanings. And so as he looks at this, as he decided to do a long-term research with himself and his team to determine what's going on in Christian circles today. And when he says that religion has gone obsolete, that gets our attention. And so this book is getting a lot of attention. It's getting a lot of press. I've read about it in various periodicals and so forth, and thought it would be good to read. And it is certainly an interesting book. So let's try to dig our way through this book. When he says it's obsolete, religion is obsolete, we need to say a couple things. We need to define religion. The religion that he talks about, he calls it traditional religion, is defined as religious groups that have existed for multiple generations, that have established practices and doctrines, an organizational structure, and cultures that are solidified in authoritative text, scripture usually, and solidified in and would not be considered novel, fringe, or alternative by mainstream population. In other words, basically what you think of when you think of organized religion. By obsolete, he doesn't mean extinct. He doesn't mean that all religion has gone away or will go away. But he is saying this by obsolete. He's saying that it is something that no longer is deemed useful or needed because something else has superseded its function, efficiency, value, or interest. In other words, the traditional religion in America, as defined by just a moment ago, has lost interest for most people because they've turned to other alternatives. Now, remember, we're not talking about all people because there's always been a remnant. There's always been people that go to church. There's still many, many people involved in Christianity, millions to be exact, but the numbers are shrinking, and they're shrinking rapidly, and Smith is trying to determine why. So he goes to work in research, surveys, interviews, and so forth, and his team works together for a long time, several years, to put together this material. And so it is of great value. He says that the thesis is to show how microcultural changes occurred across decades led to the demise of traditional religions. Things have happened back in the 90s and the 80s and the 70s that have come to a head at the end. And he says the real turning point is 1991 to 2009. There's been a major shift in the thinking of Americans and in thinking of religious people. In 1990, those two decades, the 90s and the first part of the 21st century. He says his goal is not to be deterministic or to despair, but rather a more realistic awareness of what's happening. So I think he has given us that in this book. Now he says this. He uses a word that not a lot of people are used to. It's a German word called Zeitgeist. And that translates down to mean simply the spirit of the age. He believes the zeitgeist, the spirit of the age, has changed, and that with that, so has the view of religion changed. So in this book, Why Religion Went Obsolete, he's going to deal with two subjects, basically. First of all, the what, and then secondly, the why. What is something that many groups, many books have been written right now, articles and so forth about the what. And he devotes chapter 1 to the what. In other words, what has happened? Why do we have it? What has happened? Well, let's identify, let's do the surveys, let's look at the shrinkage of attendance in American churches and so forth. And he identifies and documents a massive decline in church attendance, a growth of the nuns who have no interest in spiritual things or Christian things, and the rise of the acceptability of being spiritual but not religious. So you probably have heard that term. I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. I don't go to church, but I'm spiritual. Very much a rise in that, and he talks about that as well. There's interest in spirituality. I'll get to that at the end, but there's lack of interest in organized religion, which has dropped off in every measurable way possible in recent times. The rest of the book, after chapter 1, is dealing with the why. Why has this happened? What has come about that has caused this massive decline, this spiritually moving away from the church and organized traditional religions? What has happened that has caused that? Why is this happening? And he gives throughout the book many reasons why he believes this is happening. And this is backed up not by his theories or his presuppositions, but by the research that he's done. So this is pretty reliable stuff, although we could quibble with some of the application or interpretation of some of these surveys and so forth. His point overall is well made. I'm going to give you a bunch of them, not all of them, but here's a number of suggestions he makes as to why religion has gone obsolete. Number one, religion for a long time has claimed to give certain benefits, such as morality or the ability to cope with life. That, come to find out, didn't always pan out very well. And secondly, other organizations and other theories and therapies and so forth have duplicated those benefits. And so religion is not very unique at all in that regard. Secondly, he talks about invasive species, as he calls them. That is things that are on the outside that are infecting, invading Christianity and religion, such as science, challenges, the busyness of life, work demands, the myriad of options that people can grasp onto today compared to what was true just a few decades prior. Then there's the long-term social trends that he identifies for us. These trends include higher education for the masses, not just for the elite, women entering the workforce, the deconstruction in a sense of the family and of marriage, with about 50% of all marriages in divorce. We have a lack of sense of community that's been lost. Most of you probably noticed that in your neighborhoods. We don't have the community, the neighbors we used to have. We have mass consumerism as well. People spend a lot of time shopping and spending. They have different attitudes towards debt and towards delayed gratification than generations in the past. And there's the rise of subjective feelings and experiences as being the final authority on what we do and think. A big change, a big shift in the zeitgeist of especially post-boomers, whom he is focusing most of his attention on, the millennials and on down at this time. And then we have a few others too that challenge. All these are great challenges to traditional religion. And then fourth, we have here is that the focus, the church itself made the mistake, he believes, I would agree, to put most of their attention on the immediate instead of the transcendent. That means that the church and Christian organizations in general have been working very hard to make people feel good and be good, and at solving social problems and making the world a better place to live. At the same time, they backed away from the transcendent, the theology, the proclamation of truth, serious worship, even the gospel and theology in general. And as they've done that, then the church has not been distinguished very much from many very good social organizations. And he kind of documents this and backs it up by looking at two major Christian periodicals. One is Christian Century, which is a liberal periodical, and the other is Christianity Today, which is a middle-of-the-road evangelical periodical. And he noted that from 1980 to 2022, there was there's 80% decline in the use of transcendent words such as heaven and hell and salvation and so forth. The focus has been on the immediate, on the needs of around us. Number 5, there's a backlash against the Christian right. Certainly unintended, but many outside of the Christian right see Christianity now as being identified with the Republican Party. And he shows here that aggressive efforts to make America great, or to bring it back to some formal, more moral state, those aggressive efforts anyway have actually pushed people away and from the church itself, as they identify not with Christianity but with a political party. And now he says often these are perceptions. They're not necessarily intended, nor are they necessarily realistic, but these are the perceptions. Then there's the spread of Eastern religions. It's very few people knew anything about Hinduism and even Muslim or Islamic until more recent days. Then number 7, we can't ignore the digital revolution. Technology, the internet, the social media has just invaded the American people and its church, as it takes away our time and our attention away from religion and almost everything else. It provides new ways for community behind our computer screens. It allows anonymity for people who want to search things they wouldn't ordinarily want to even talk about, to kind of slipping around the side, or to spread criticisms and rumors, and do it all in a form of anonymity, or at least hiding out in their bedroom as they type on their computers. If they have doubts, they can go search the internet. They don't have to ask their pastors. And there's also a shrinking our attention span, which is very detrimental to people coming to church and listening to a lengthy sermon or Bible study. It's corroded our trust in authorities as well, and made brick and mortar unnecessary for many people. Then there's postmodernism, as he calls it. The challenges of coming along for many decades now of truth claims. There's no such thing as truth. There's no such thing as universal truth. And anybody who claims they know the truth are just searching or questing for power. And so the church is now seen as a power monger. We're trying to gain power over the lives of other people. The new atheism didn't last too long, but it did make a point. And that is that you can be good without being religious. That was kind of the main point of new atheism. And many people bought into that. Then we have the sexual revolution. He identifies 3 sexual revolutions: the 1920s, the 1960s and 70s, and then the most recent one beginning in the 1990s, which opened the door to virtually every form of sexual desire and sinfulness. All now are mainstream, with only a few exceptions that are left. Pedophilia would be one of those, and forcing someone into a sexual relationship beyond their will. Outside of that, virtually everything else is open. And the rise then of the BGTQ plus community, and especially transgenderism, is all part of this new sexual revolution. And it's a great challenge to be able to see these things, the church to present these things as wrong and sinful, and not be seen as hateful and bigotry. Then there's religious pluralism, as we have many different religions that are out there. Disillusionment, number 12, with leaders and authority figures in general, as we've seen a lot of corruption, not just in the church, but the Great Recession, for example. All these leaders in industry that let us down and almost ruined the whole country. That took away a lot of hope and a lot of trust in such people, and that translates over to the church. And the religious scandals, number 13, hasn't helped a bit. So we have people that we trusted and we believed in and so forth who are proven to be hypocrites. And although they're a very small minority, they are, in the general public's eye, they're seen as Christians and representing the Christian movement, and that doesn't help. And then number 14 is the evangelical mission drift. As the Christians moved from the gospel and discipleship and worship more into politics and social action. That's a mission drift that wasn't there once upon a time, except in the liberal circles. And then finally, we'd mention pragmatism. Whatever works for you is good. And that's the mindset of many people today. Now, we combine all these factors, leads to a zeitgeist that he says, and I quote, that religion is obsolete, redundant, and unnecessary at best, outdated, discredited, and damaging at worst. Not a very good future. Still, Americans have not lost interest in spirituality. This is an interesting wrinkle in the book. He says you'd have to be hiding under a rock somewhere not to see that there's a great interest in spirituality. Now, religion, he says, is not being replaced by secularism. That's been the main idea for a long time. He says not so. It's being replaced by other forms of spirituality. And by that, what he means, it's being replaced by enchantment, by the paranormal, by karma, by magic, by astrology. There's a lot of interest in these spiritual things, these spiritualities, because they're new, they're exciting, they're fun, they're interesting. And you contrast that with what is perceived as the boring, slow-moving features of the traditional religion, and religion comes out second best. Now, Smith says, as he comes toward the end of his book, he has little hope for the future of religion. He says, neither presenting the church mission as moralism, calling people back to doing good, nor proclaiming truth, teachers of truth. Neither one of those are working. Neither one of those are going to work. Post-boomers aren't interested. It's not going to bring them back. So it's a no-win situation, he says on page 367. He says, though, at the end, in his conclusion, the best that we can do is to for the church itself, the religion, to do some soul searching and decide what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it. Again, even there, he doesn't have much hope that there's going to be much change, and even the changes that might take place might be detrimental and push more people away. And it might be that religion as such will totally become extinct and something new will arise in its place. He doesn't know. He's not a prophet. I think he's very pessimistic. I don't agree with him myself in a lot of his final conclusions, because God always has his people. There's never been a majority of people that follow Christ. And there's much to be said for that, and we need to look at that carefully and not be in despair. But this is his premise. This is the direction he's going. It's a book that all Christian leaders probably ought to read, or at least look into much of it, because he has a lot to inform us about that should be and could be helpful for our ministries into the future.